Good evening, good evening, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, WeatherBrains episode 940. This is for the 22nd of January, 2024. Hey, we are about 1 week away from our 18th anniversary. 18 years of WeatherBrains. Who'd have thunk it? But if you're new here, this is the pre-show, the magical part of the program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time, we say very outrageous things. So the reaction a little mixed to the shorter shows. For those that have not listened the last couple of episodes, we're trying to shorten the show from 2 hours down to about 90 minutes. And we've had some comments on both sides, and some people like the shorter format, some don't. But I think those that like the shorter version, those have been little more vocal, and we've had more of those. So we're going to try and keep the show to about 90 minutes. And the problem is, like we've talked about here, that there's just too much media. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody. I mean, the guy at the bus stop here, the guy at the Arby's. I mean, everybody's got one. And people can only consume so much. You got Hulu and Netflix, and it's just people are bombarded with content, and people have 24 hours in a day, and they have to live their lives. I mean, they have to see their family, and they just can't, consume stuff all the time. So hopefully in an effort to alleviate the congestion, our 90-minute format will help. Jen, Mark, what do you think?
So far, so
I have a
good.
podcast.
You do.
Starting two new ones later.
Yeah, everybody's, I'm
Wow.
telling you, everybody's got one. And,
Mhm.
a lot of these folks that like over in the news department, I'm going to start a podcast, and immediately they think they're going to get 50,000 listeners,
Right.
and they're going to make a pile of money. And what happens that they wind up with, 12, 13 people that listen, and they just quit after, a few episodes. And that's kind of where we are. And the Spotify, these big boys that paid all this money for podcasting and stuff, it's going through a morph, and the
It is.
strong will survive. It's all about content. Content is king. And if the content's good, they'll find you, but they've got to sort through this massive amount of stuff. And and I used to listen to audiobooks a lot. I think those are interesting. I don't have time to read. And
Right.
I've found myself lately, not listening to as many books, which is not good, because that's where I learn things mostly, is that. But I listen in the car, and that's mainly how I consume media, is when I'm driving places. So,
Right.
Mhm.
I do that.
but
And when I'm exercising at the gym, I get on the elliptical and I'll listen to First Up or whatever, to Up First from NPR, and maybe Marketplace from Kai Risdall. And I get some finance stuff, and I know just enough sound bites and at least sound intelligent. And then on the long trips, like when I went up to the Great Lakes and back, I listened to all kinds of stuff for hours. And yeah, man, there's only even all that driving, there's only so much you can listen to.
yeah, and after a while, you need to turn it off and just think. I mean,
Yep.
it's like,
Sometimes I tell you, Apple, I say, "Hey Siri, watch, it's going to do it." Whoops, there it
yeah,
goes.
yeah,
Um, play meditation music, and it's just like I'm driving along, and it sounds like I'm getting a massage.
yeah. But
You have
and
to.
I say
Play
this all the
piano
time.
music.
The biggest struggle I have, it's time management, and I
Yep.
honestly don't have time to do analytical thinking with big weather events about to happen, because I'm just bombarded with so much stuff that I have to do, and that's dangerous. Our job is to be analytical thinkers. I mean, that's what we do. And if you're so bombarded with things to do where you can't sit down and analyze and use your CPU cycles in your brain, you got a problem. And at some point you got to turn this stuff off and just focus a little bit. So
Yeah,
but
compartmentalization, man. It's
and,
hard.
and I think everybody struggles with time management. It's everybody. I mean, we're just a very busy society right now. So,
Yep.
Mhm.
but there's always time for Weather Brains, and in a week away, Jen, is our 18th anniversary here.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
That's
so
crazy.
this show number one was done on the 31st of January, 2006.
Wow.
And I'll play a snippet here before we actually start the show. This was January 31st of '06, show one. I personally think we have way too many warnings. Severe thunderstorm warnings are a dime a dozen, and it's getting to be that way with tornado warning.
Welcome to WeatherBrains, the podcast about weather by weather fans. I'm David Black with the Weather Company from Birmingham, Alabama, welcoming you to our first program. With me tonight, James Spann, the chief meteorologist of ABC 3340 Television in Birmingham, Alabama. Hello, James.
Hey, David, how you doing? That was show number one. See, we actually had a professional host. And the show was 30 minutes, and he pre-produced it. I mean, David did a great job.
Wow.
But David did weekend weather for me in the 80s at the NBC channel here. So we go back a long way, and he was just great. But that was show number one, and I'm still griping about the exact same things here, 18 years later. Nothing has changed, nothing. So
Sadly. Did you get my note about Mark's hard out at 40 after?
Yes, you're in control here.
Okay, I'm in control. Oh, wow.
Mark has many leather-bound books, and his home smells of rich mahogany.
There you go.
So,
he is kind of a big deal.
No, I'll let you be sure that he's out. You're kind of the captain of the ship.
Yeah.
I'm just the stooge that presses the buttons here.
Yeah. Bill's out of here again tonight, so who knows what he's up to.
He said he was going to Albuquerque. I'm like, side eye.
No, we know he's on it's 50-cent beer night at Hooters. We know exactly where Bill is every time he misses the show. 50-cent beer night at Hooters. So that's the deal. So we've got the AMS, I think, next week. We're going to try and do a show from there.
Is that up in Boston?
Baltimore.
Yeah. That Taylor Swift's coming in or something. I'm seeing people.
Yeah. They got you got the Ravens, and Taylor Swift coming in, and AMS going on at the same time in Baltimore. So it's going to be a wild.
Taylor Trogdon, the guy that used to be the storm surge unit at the Hurricane Center, now is out in Boulder or somewhere.
Yeah,
brilliant scientist. He was talking about that traffic and whatever, and I was just trying to be funny. Maybe it's too soon. I said, you'll be fine. Just, keep wide right.
Yeah, probably too soon. Yeah. And welcome to our television viewers that are watching. We're at the top of the hour. And for those that watch on the television side, let me just, before we start, just so you'll know, and master control as well, we are shortening the show from 2 hours to 90 minutes, approximately 90 minutes. And yeah, we might run, look, there's no hard out here, but we're going to try and keep it a little shorter. And I sent a note to the MCR coordinator today. So for those that are on the television side, we'll be through here in about 90 minutes. Of course, there's no weather. Last week, we did not do the show on Monday because of weather, but things are much calmer here. So let's get this thing started here. Let's record track number 1 and track number 2. And here we go in here comes Neil. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Bill Curtis says we're kind of a big deal. WeatherBrains episode number 940. This is for the 22nd of January, 2024, and which means we are exactly 1 week away from the 18th anniversary of this show. The very first show was done on the 31st of January, 2006. And that's back in the days when podcasting was, I don't think anybody knew what it was. But we, and I've said this on here before, we started this because I think so many of us need a creative outlet. We work very structured days. In my case, I'm at it, from 4 a.m. to midnight with some breaks, but you got to be on TV at 5:07. You got to do radio at 6:22. I mean, it's just constant bombardment of structure. And we needed a no structure, creative window. And that's what the original purpose of this was. And I guess it still is. So Troy 06, 18 years. Who'd have thunk it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, we made it. Dr. Jacobs, good to see you back. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, I've been weirdly busy considering AMS is next week, and I don't actually have a single talk. So,
And weirdly busy is the working show title right now.
I like that.
So you got AMS and you got the Ravens and you got Taylor Swift all at the same time. How's this going to work out, Neil?
I don't know, but I was talking to Kim the other day, and I got a hotel even though I live in DC. I just didn't want to drive all the way to Baltimore every day. And I booked it. And people were like, "How did you get a hotel room?" I was like, "What do you mean?" They were like, "Everything's sold out because of the game." I'm like, I wasn't really paying attention to the football. Embarrassed to say that I got a hotel on the cheap the day before apparently there was a run on hotels.
Man, you're good. I mean, you're good. I mean, that's outstanding. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting show coming from Baltimore. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. James Adelot is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Did you ice up today?
We did last night and slowly have melted out of it today. We're sitting at 33, and I've been watching the mesonet sensors down to 1/10 of a degree very closely. So a lot of slush left, but 33 is a lot better than 31.
That's true. You know, we've had parts of my state. I mean, we're talking Alabama with snow and ice down for 7 consecutive days, which doesn't happen that often up around Florence, Muscle Shoals. And we actually still have some systems up there that are closed tomorrow. They hit 50 today, but the ice was so thick, it just takes a while to get rid of it. So hopefully life gets back to normal for them. But Jen, since Bill Murray's on a pub crawl or out at the Hooters 50-cent beer night, you're in charge of the show. So let's bring in our guest. It's going to be a good one tonight.
It is, yes. And before Bill went drinking somewhere, he wrote this amazing introduction. And I'm going to read that for our guest tonight. Tonight's guest, WeatherBrain, is a frequent contributor to the show and a friend of the podcast. He's a renowned expert in the field of hurricane tracking and reporting, known for his innovative use of technology and social media to deliver real-time updates on storm developments. With years of experience and a deep passion for meteorology, he has made significant contributions to hurricane awareness and safety. His insights and expertise make him a valuable voice in understanding the complexities of these powerful storms. Mark Sudduth, welcome back to WeatherBrains.
Thank you, Jen. Great to be here.
It's awesome to see you, my friend. And we're going to talk a little bit about the tropics tonight, but our main focus is going to be on your parents. They were both very influential and supportive of your life and career. And you lost your dad back in September of 2023. And then I just learned that you lost your mom back in 2021. So let's just start talking about your folks and who were they? What were their interests, their careers, and how did they foster the passion of weather for you when you were just a little tyke?
Yeah, I mean, the older we get, we do start losing people. Some people lose them earlier in life, of course, but it's been kind of a tough 2 years. But one of the things that especially my dad taught me, his name was Doug, William Douglas Sudduth. An Alabama native, grew up in Montgomery, so forth, and my mom's from Tennessee. But anyway, perseverance. You just persevere. You move through stuff, and you just try to do the best you can, and that's really helped because it's been a crazy 4 years. 4 years ago we started, the Twilight Zone live, basically. And renewed year after year over on Broadway. If you've caught it, you know what I'm talking about, right? Ha. And so it's been really weird anyway. And to lose both parents during this strange and unusual time is hard, but a big part of it is a good, solid family. And I've got 7 kids, and as people start to pick their jaw up off the floor after hearing that news, yeah, that helps too. Some of them are adults, very supportive wife, and outside family, not immediate family, but cousins and friends and whatnot, and all of that helps. But as far as who my parents were, and I think what's important about this discussion is how important parenting is. And we kind of get lost in that now because so many kids use this or a bigger version of it, and that seems to be the parenting. And it's not just a saying. We didn't have that when I was a kid. We didn't. We had Atari. We had Saturday morning cartoons. There was 4 channels. And then we had cable. And then eventually we had the Weather Channel and CNN, and everything grew from there. And here we are today and we were talking out before the show started formally. There's too many choices now. So growing up, my parents really fostered science and how important education is. My mom was a school psychologist. My dad was in public administration in the mental health system. He went to Duke University. That's why I got some of the Duke stuff around me, and my love for Duke basketball, and University of Minnesota. So both my parents college educated, and have a brother named Chris, and we just both had not a strict family, well, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and here's your path, but just sort of guiding us and keeping the guardrails up, but liberal enough that we were able to make mistakes because you learn from those mistakes. And that's very big in science. Science is always trying to observe and then research and learn, and there's a whole process, and they fostered that. My dad sailed, and that was what really introduced me to weather. He had a sailboat. He proposed to my mother, and James, you'll like this, in Mobile Bay on a boat
Wow.
in the late 60s. And I think as soon as he did it, a gust of wind, the story goes, hit the mainsail, and it swung around. The dog that had a little poodle jumped into Mobile Bay. He had to get the dog, and I think that it's somewhere in there my mother must have said yes. So here I am.
Wow.
So they have strong Alabama roots. And Montgomery, in the civil rights era, my dad, I've been going through pictures and slides since his death, and some of them are just amazing. He's got pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King in Selma and in Montgomery. Just incredible stuff. He served in Korea, and just was awesome, awesome at teaching me about the sky. He took me out. One of my earliest memories, and this is in my documentary series, The Hurricane Highway, the very first episode of that series, I had my mom and dad in there. And one of the earliest memories I have is him taking me down to the waterfront in New Bern, 90 miles up from where I live now in Wilmington, to show me Comet West in 1976 in the eastern sky. And as a child, it just seemed huge, and it was a very brilliant comet. And that just sparked something. People say, I've done so many interviews, they say, well, where did you get your start? How did all this happen? Where does that bug come from? That has to be it, I guess, just having a father that would show me the natural world, right? And that just grew, and they would encourage me to go talk to the local TV meteorologist, a gentleman named Skip Waters, who was at WCTI in New Bern. He passed away several years ago, early mentor of mine. ECU Summer Science Camp, ECU, interesting, how full circle. My daughter goes there. She's going to be a doctor in physical therapy in a couple of years. So it's just always nostalgic to go see ECU and how much it's grown since I was there in a gifted and talented program at Summer Science Camp. So it was science, 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 some math, but I never was really strong with math. I just couldn't grasp concepts. I was very good at visual arts, piano playing. So I thought I was going to be a music major and a musician. I think everybody thinks they're going to be a rock star at some point in their life. And meteorology and weather was kind of a secondary thing. So I was actually a music major to start at UNC Wilmington. I know I'm jumping all around the map, but eventually I realized, no, they don't teach you how to be Phil Collins or Steve Perry at UNC Wilmington School of Music. I switched over to geography and pursued that with weather, climate, and statistics. That's what I was best at with math. Got accepted to NC State for meteorology as well as Mississippi State, but I was like, I want to be out in the field and what we know now of as storm chasers, but I wanted to be a storm chaser with a degree. is kind of what it all came down to. So I switched over from music. But anyway, to wrap up this opening part, the big influence from both parents, luckily they were both married all the way up to the end, was huge because I got that nurturing, but also had the freedom, like I said, to screw up once in a while. And I think that's okay.
That's great. For those of us who've lost a parent, which I did, lost my dad 10 years ago, it can be very difficult, has a profound effect on us. And you lost your mom when you were in the field.
Yeah.
And then for your dad, everyone was there for
Right.
the most part. So how did both of those losses impact you personally, and then maybe give you a different professional perspective on your job as with hurricane track?
Yeah, so for when my mom died, I was in Mexico on my way to Mazatlan, and for Hurricane Pamela, my first trip to Mexico, and I had a good colleague friend of mine helping, and there was a lady that he had known as coming along as an interpreter and a guide, and I think I was driving, and my dad texted. It was late at night in Mexico, so it's pretty even later back east, and he just said we lost mom, and it was just like literally that gut punch because there was no ambiguity. I didn't, what does he mean by that? Like she's outside and nobody can find her? Like I didn't, it was out of the blue. And it was just like, all right, I got to pull over. And I told Brent and Judith, and it was just a disaster. And they were like, why don't we just get to the hotel, forget the hurricane? I'm like, nope. My mom would not have wanted that. I started focusing, I got to finish this because she took me to some of these science camps, and I went to like a Duke sponsored marine lab thing when I was trying to figure out what science am I really interested in. So my mom was heavily involved too. And I'm like, no, 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 we're not going to quit. She would not have wanted that. And so that was hard, dealing with the hurricane. And then I was by myself in the hotel room. And I think that was probably the hardest night of my life, aside from when I almost died in Vegas, which is a whole other story when my aorta went to town and, almost killed me, but that was self-induced, so to speak. That's pain. And like, I almost died, but losing my mom and getting the news like that and then dealing with it by myself was, that was hard. And no doubt, as it should be. And I remember my family was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, grandpa told him we should have waited. There was a debate. Should we wait till he gets back? And I was really like, if you had to do it again, yes, I would want to know, because I always kind of joke with my wife when I'm working, I put my phone in airplane mode because James, as we were talking about pre-show, so many things are coming at you that I do put my phone in airplane mode. I don't want anybody to bother me. And, when I'm trying to sleep, and I don't want to sound curt here, but it's like if somebody died, they are still going to be dead when I wake up, and especially if I'm far away. And I'm not even trying to be funny about it. It's like, but this situation, I wasn't sleeping and I got the message. And yes, I would want to do that again as much as it hurt. I was glad that he was able to tell me. And then I called him and it was very emotional and whatnot. And then for my mom, or my dad, he had lung cancer and had dealt with my mom's death pretty hard for almost 2 years. And then through a treatment that he was getting that was somewhat experimental, it backfired and he developed something called pneumonitis. And that's what ended up killing him. And it was very hard because I was angry that the cure was worse than the disease and all that he went through for almost 2 years. And it's like, and then, with everything, time heals, and it gets easier. And, we got good pictures of everybody during the good old days. There's the family. It's a little reflection in here with all the lights, but a good, close family. As much as it hurts and stays hurtful for a while, it helps because you've got all that love and familyness, if that's a word, it is now. And for me, that helps. It's sometimes I still get that sort of weird feeling when I think about it, and like the day that he died, and we were all right there. But again, what an amazing thing. He was there when I came into the world. I think in 1970 though, they didn't let the dad in the room, but he was there a few minutes later. And I got to be there when he left the world. And as hard as that is, that's still a beautiful thing. And I've realized that, and like everybody has an expiration date, and how you deal with it later, I think defines the rest of your life. And for them, they would want me to be charge ahead, be happy, got a big family. It's growing. I got a grandson coming in March. So yay. That's going to be really hard. Me being granddad, like what? But,
Oh, Mark, yeah.
So just, a weird 2 years, and then now the last few months in September. And I remember, watching on my phone, trying to keep up with Hurricane Lee. And I think that helped to distract me a little bit. Just watching Tropical Tidbits every 12Z GFS, because it's hard to sit there knowing your dad's dying in the next room. The hospital took real good care of us up on the semi-hospice floor. It could have been, there's a lot worse ways to go through it, and people have, and I empathize with that. You know what I mean? Like, I had it easy because I got to be there. So I consider myself blessed, if that makes any sense.
Mark, thanks for joining us and telling us this. But Mark, you're not out chasing high school bake sales.
Right.
You're out chasing hurricanes. And I want to hear from those folks that meant so much to you, what some of the phone calls sounded like when you were going in. I know I've seen a lot of your video when you were going in Northwest Florida and some of these big events. And I have a feeling mom and dad probably had some good advice when they talked to you and they knew where you were and these big events and frankly, how dangerous it could be. I'd be interested in, yeah.
My dad was, I think, my biggest fan.
Okay.
And when we started doing live, and look, I'll brag a little bit. We were the first Hurricane Track to do live on the internet from a vehicle in 2005, before the iPhone was even invented, and that's the truth. We had a setup through Sprint back then, whatever. Katrina was the one, and my dad was able to tune in and watch. And by 2009, we had a little chat called C-Box, and he would get on there. It's like, man, my dad's on the chat talking with me. And he was my biggest fan. My mom would say that. Dad's been watching you the whole way. And then as the years went on, I know we've had Spotter Network for a while, but we use APRS and the APRS.fi site so he could track me. Now we got Life 360 and we have FaceTime, and, everybody is easily accessible. But he was always watching, and he would stay up till 1 a.m. till I got to the hotel, or, I'd call him on the way to an event to speak or something. I've been traveling all night. And I'd call him up and my voice was tired. And I remember he would always be like, goodness, Mark, because I could barely talk, whatever. So he was my biggest fan. I get my gift of talking from him, and he gets it from his father, my grandfather, who was a salesman. And they call it the gift of gab. And a little bit of a side note, the family, my cousin, his name is Skip Sudduth, and he is an actor. And he is most famous, I guess, hopefully Skip would agree, for being in the Robert De Niro movie as one of the stars with De Niro, Ronin. Skip was the driver in that action movie with Robert De Niro. He's been in several other movies. He was on Third Watch. He played Sully on the NBC series Third Watch for many years. And he was there the day that my dad died. And we all just work together. And I remember, to get back to what you were saying, that my parents would follow, back when I was working with the Weather Channel. Oh, he was on the Weather Channel. First time I met Jim Cantori, I called them up and told them about it. And, now that I'm with Fox Weather, same thing. They were just so excited. They never get used to it. Like we didn't get used, we would see Skip in movies and, oh, okay, that's pretty cool, and
But Mark, there had to be some advice, motherly or fatherly advice along the way in the middle of a hurricane, when it sounded like where you happened to be was probably not the best choice for anyone to be at a given time.
Yeah.
And I gotta figure there's, if nothing else, Mark, please be careful.
Yes.
You know,
The biggest thing was, is anybody going with you? Do you have help?
yeah,
And my dad would always say when I didn't, and it was just me, I hate that you're having to do this alone. And
yeah.
I'd always tell him, I'm not really alone because now that we're live, everywhere we go, I've got this audience that's watching on the outside, and people would literally, they still do it today, text me, oh, there's something going on up the road, or if I'm looking for a place to stay, Mark, I know there's a Hampton Inn and wherever that's available, or even Bill these days, Bill Murray, right? He'll email me and hey, I got rooms in Orlando if you need them. Like, there's somebody always watching out.
There's a Hooters down the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Or a Texas
show
Roadhouse.
title.
Cheesecake Factory. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, he would always worry about me being alone, which of course, my mom was just more like, hey, he knows what he's doing. It's kind of like my wife's attitude that he's kind of an expert at this as much as you can be. Doesn't mean I'm immune. And that's something I'm going to talk about on Fox in just a little bit about safe driving in icy conditions. Being really good at something doesn't mean that you are immune. And so there was always, the chance, think about Hurricane Michael. They were both still with us then. That was scary. And they knew. And Charlie was the worst, by the way, in 2004. Talk about 20 years. WeatherBrains coming up on 18 years. We're coming up on the 20-year anniversary of the infamous 2004 season. And Hurricane Charlie is the one that really, they were very worried because they knew we were right in the core of that Cat 4 near Punta Gorda. But champions of my work, very much the cautious, always be careful. And then early in my career, I'm going to tell you a real quick story. I wanted to go down in 1999 to Hurricane Brett in South Texas.
Yep.
And all I had was my green Isuzu Rodeo and this guy I was working with named Eddie. And I really wanted to go. And it's like 40 hours to get there from Wilmington. And I just remember my dad was just like, he really discouraged it. It's like, you need to stand down because like we can make Mobile by this time and then Houston. And like I was trying to calculate it all out. Didn't have a lot of money either. And he's like, dude, you got to just stand down. There will be more. And I'll never forget that. I can hear him now, stand down. Like, don't drive to Texas for this. You'll be exhausted when you get there. And, little did I know that Kennedy County, Texas has like 8 people and 4 million cows. There was really no reason for me to have gone, so to speak, and risk it driving all night. But yeah, good parents I had, and they've led to hopefully a couple of good sons, myself and Chris, my brother, and now I have 7 kids and getting ready to have a grandkid, and 4 of my kids are adults and have completed school and are doing, interestingly enough, nothing in science, weather, although health science is science, they're all in medicine of some kind, either health, food. My daughter's going to be PT. My son, Cole, is a nurse at UNC System, actually does travel nursing now, and he'll be a millionaire before he's 40. But that's great. That's what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to give them a better life than I had. And I think I got a lot of that from having 2 good parents.
Mark, let me ask you about this. James in Tulsa, and thank you for being with us and talking about this. You talked about your parents and how it sounds like really cultivated your sense of curiosity in the world.
Right.
But how did you do that? How did that transfer between you then and your kids, especially in this day with technology, as you touched on, with these things and Fortnite around every corner, things like that? How did you convert what the great favor your parents did to enable your kids?
Same exact thing. And it wasn't an obligatory, I got to carry the torch. It's just automatic. It's just something deep within me. So at an early age, all the kids, taking them out in August to see the Perseids. And I know now, like my oldest daughter, she'll sometimes text, what was that school we would go to up in Pender County to see those meteors? And why? Well, me and my boyfriend are going to go up and see it. And part of me is like, yeah. Then I'm like, wait, your boyfriend? What? Yeah. I didn't teach you to do that, but taking them when I can, out. Don't take them, quote, storm chasing with me, because you separate that from work and home life, and it's just dangerous. But we get a good thunderstorm, we go out on the porch. I teach them. They make fun of me because I'm always looking up, and my 13-year-old, he does these impressions of me that, Dad, what is he looking at? Is he? I'm like, look at those mammatus clouds or whatever. Okay, it's just clouds. And I mean, every opportunity I can, teaching them about anything related to the natural world. The eclipse is an example. I think I took a couple of my kids out to dinner tonight at a little hamburger place, and I talked their ears off about going to San Antonio in April.
Yep.
And then getting out for the eclipse. And it's like, I don't know how much sticks, but I definitely do it. And maybe through osmosis, it gets through, because there is a lot to get through now with all the distractions of social media. We go to the beach and we talk about the tides. We talk about, this is where Hurricane so-and-so came in. We did a trip in 2021 along the Gulf Coast down to Naples and up the east side. And it was like my own little family tour of the Hurricane Highway. I showed them where Michael was. I showed them where Irma was and Charlie. And, we stopped at exit 170 where we were on the overpass area near Naples and Punta Gorda, whatever. It's just always there. And I want to go help and volunteer at their school. I'm always, kids come up all the time, is it going to snow, Mr. Sudduth? And I'm like, well, so it does just keep going. Whether one of them, I still have 3 at home. Whether one of them goes into weather or some other earth science remains to be seen, but at least they'll know about it, and they're exposed to it.
This, thanks for joining the show. This actually leads into kind of a question I had, because as I've got 2 young boys, 8 and 10, and I'm kind of torn between exposing them to science and kind of nudging them to it, but I'm also afraid of, if I push too hard, they'll go the other direction. Like, how do you balance that as a parent?
Yeah, to me, it's just, I look at it as just fun. Like, they're very aware. That's one good thing. The older ones now, they have radar scope and they send me screenshots. Even my dad had radar scope. I set it up for him and he'd send me screenshots. The younger ones, they'll be aware. And so I just kind of let it go. I'm not like, okay, you're going to be a meteorologist or whatever. Like, so I've got a really smart 13-year-old. He's very good at math, and he could be an engineer. He could, and we know meteorology is basically an engineering degree with some weather classes. In my opinion, it's very math intense, and he could do it, but he doesn't seem to have a real knack for it like I do. It's not natural. So, there's just no pushing. It's just all just kind of like what my parents did. It was like, open the doors and see who goes through, but don't push anybody. But that doesn't mean we let him slack off. We stay on him and he gets really good grades and so forth. And we'll see. Once he's in high school, maybe he will think, yeah, I would like to study the weather or geology or something. Who knows? It's all, I guess, up to the individual family. And that's a great question. It's hard to, I don't push, and neither does my wife. We just tell them, look, you got to do your best. And whatever you want to do in your adult life, once you get to college, just don't live here. You have to leave. You got to leave the nest. That's the only requirement. Not that we wouldn't embrace it. You know what I mean, though. You want them to go on and do something great. And if one of them goes into weather, great. If not, we'll still have our adventures together. We went out west a couple of years ago, and I talked to them about the monsoon. And I'm telling you, Neil, and everybody else, they get exposed to it. Whether or not somebody follows remains to be seen, but it won't hurt my feelings if they don't, because I know they still at least have a little bit of the seed that I planted. And I get that, of course, from my parents.
So I'm curious a little bit on some soon-to-be grandparenting strategy, and I'll preface this with the context of some pages from my mom's book, which I feel like she's okay disclosing this now because I haven't been a complete failure. But she stockpiled everything I screwed up as a kid, whether it was F's on my report card or worse things. And she's like, one day I'm going to show your kids all this stuff because they'll probably think you're great. And I
Right.
want them to know the truth.
Interesting.
So are you stockpiling stuff or can I just assume that that stuff doesn't exist because your kids are awesome?
Well, that's a really good question because I know my wife's got boxes with all their names on it, with everything they've ever brought home, pictures they painted in kindergarten to whatever. I mean, literally boxes of it with 7 kids, and we're gonna have to get a storage unit eventually. And most of them are, sound braggadocious, but they are pretty good accomplishments. But they've stumbled occasionally, and I guess again through because she's got good solid parents too, that are both still with us. So when the foundation is solid, usually everything else will be solid too. But yeah, I made mistakes especially in high school. I went to high school in Las Vegas. That's a whole weird story. We lived out there from 86 to 89, and man, like I don't know how I got through that without jail time or something because I was like, wild and whatever. And my kids probably wouldn't even believe me. There's no way. I mean, nothing crazy or, truly illegal, but just didn't care about school. Again, thought I was going to be a pop star, singer, songwriter. And, who needs college? I'm going to be living in Vegas. I'm going to be playing at the Mirage when they finish it. And you guys can move to North Carolina and I'm going to be the next, Phil Collins or whatever. And school schmool. And then just something hit me. I was like, all right, I'll come to North Carolina and we'll see what's up. And the rest is history. You just never know. I mean, kids are interesting. They are chaotic. They are at the same time all at once brilliant and fascinating, and they can make you just pull your hair out, even when they are adults. And I did the same thing. Even when I was an adult, I still did stuff that made my parents like, but
What what's your policy on devices?
oh,
And I wasn't going to ask this question, but I see that
that's where you got me.
Kim's joined us, and she can tell you a story about just totally making fun of me 24 hours ago because I whiffed on a pop culture thing that I should have known, but I live in a cave, and I'm completely disconnected from all things related to modern society, apparently, because I don't have enough devices or follow things. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So this is one area where I will admit just a general failure that the devices are probably too much a part of their lives. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know because I haven't seen recognizable bad repercussions, but not the discipline. I'm more of, as my wife would like, I can't believe he's admitting this. I am more of the friend parent, and she's more of the disciplinarian. And I think that maybe that's okay, I guess. But, cracking the whip. And I mean, look, if they're still up at midnight, I'll just go to the router and turn it off. And then I get yelling and complaining, but then it dies away after a few minutes. But there is a lot in these devices and our iPads and whatnot. And it's just constant. And it is a bad thing. I listen to the podcast, James. There we go again about all these podcast content stuff.
Yep.
And that is one area. And look, I think admitting when you're wrong, that if I had to do that again, and luckily I'm done, 7's enough. And I'm hoping my son Nathan, when his son arrives, that he and his wife will do this, restrict that, and let's change that a little bit, if not a lot, because I think there can be a lot of harm. TikTok, everybody's got to perform. Instagram, whatever. And I see it on social media too, and storm chasing. Everybody's got to be famous. And again, James, we were talking about this earlier. Everybody wants a podcast with 50,000 subscribers and YouTube. It's like, no, just be you. And a lot of that gets baked in when you watch this through your device. And that's one area where I wish I could rewind the clock and not let that be such a big part of their lives. But everything else, pretty good, at least so far. That's a great question, Neil. And that's a whole topic for all kinds of societal issues and whatnot. even outside of weather.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And Mark, before we let you go, I want to share real quick that, knowing what tonight's topic was all about, I've had my dad on my mind. It was January 4th. It's been 10 years since he was gone. And there was something harder about this year. I don't know if it was because it was the 10th year. I've been thinking about him a lot, and he was very big into genealogy when he retired. And so he did research and writing and digging, and he connected the dots. And so I am cut from the same cloth. It makes sense why I do Tornado Talk, and I can spend 12 hours sitting here just doing what I do to tell these stories. And if he was here today, I know that he would be with me on every single trip. He would be at every library. So when you think about your future and your goals and everything that you're working toward for the rest of your life, and you're taking your folks with you, how do you plan on just continuing their legacy and the lessons that you've learned as you step forward in your career and everything, as a grandparent coming up soon and all that, just kind of wrap that up for us here as you look ahead to your future.
Yeah, I think just keeping, it's kind of like that movie Coco, where they, from Disney or whatever it was, that you got to remember them. And that's how you keep them alive in one regard. And because it was such a good relationship. Hey, look, I know there's some relationships that aren't good and people want to forget. And I get it. I'm, again, fortunate that that wasn't me. So talking about them, we got their pictures up around the house. We look at videos we did at Christmas. And it's just so much happiness, I think. And it's sad they're gone, but they're still here through all those happy moments and the wonderful things they've left behind. And, telling Nathan's son eventually about his great granddad and great grandma. And here's a real quick thing from yesterday. So my mom went from school psychology and eventually went into basket making, fiber art. She became a North Carolina living treasure who works in the Smithsonian. She made one of these. It looks called a Carolina snowflake, amongst other things. She wrote a book called Math in a Basket based on the Fibonacci sequence. And she taught my son, several of them, about how to make baskets. And yesterday, went to a very small little craft show here in Wilmington where my son, who's a paramedic, EMS guy, tech, whatever, made some of these and was selling them. And you couldn't distinguish them from hers. And, just that kind of thing, living it on and keeping it going. And the storytelling that I do through stuff like tonight and the podcast that we have and documentaries that I make, you can hear the influence of my parents in there and the gift that I have of being able to talk. I guess I got that from them. So that continues on. And it's sad because you want them here forever, but it's still very happy thoughts from, what they left behind, for sure.
So you've got a hard out, Mark. You got to go, right?
Well, I figure let's talk until Fox rings me up. We do all the interviews through FaceTime, and I'll keep going until the producer calls me, if that's okay with you.
Okay. So I was just going to, before you had to go, I was going to kind of morph into your thoughts on the hurricane season. 2024 is here. I mean, come on, man. We're 6 months away.
Exactly. We're less than 6 months. And again,
that's
a
true.
gift from my dad. He, gave me, that's funny, good timing. Thoughts on the hurricane season. We're losing the El Nino, heading to La Nina. The Atlantic's record warmth, probably going to stay there. We're going to talk about this again in a couple months, I'm sure. We really need to start focusing on that. It's an important year. Luck favors the prepared.
All right. And you got to go.
There they are.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
WeatherBrains, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
So we've got to morph right into this. Kim, we need to get some clarification on Neil's comments here. I want to hear all about this, please.
Well, I just have one question for every other panelist. Right now, who do you think is the most famous person in the United States?
Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift.
Jason Kelsey.
I made a reference to Tay-Tay, who's going to be in Baltimore, right? Because AMS, like that football game is like right when AMS is starting, so exciting times. And Neil was like, "What is that? Is that like you made some crack about it sounding like something broken?" I was like, So he outed himself as completely unaware. And he was also unaware of her attachment to football and just literally everything that was happening, including the football game. And I had to ask him, how deep exactly is that cave in which you dwell? And the answer is very, very, very deep. Very deep.
I felt like a complete idiot. So instead of spending the rest of the night reading monthly weather review, I went on Teen Vogue and caught up on all the stuff I was apparently missing out on.
Yeah, so now he's empowered to go into AMS knowing these important pop references. You know, it'll be important to know what's going on at least around you, because some of that might appear in Baltimore. So I'm glad I'm here. I'm here to help you adapt to
You might
the
need-
rest of the world.
You might need some Swifty clothing for AMS.
Is that clothing?
Yeah.
Oh man.
For those that are not watching, that are listening to the podcast version, we have a photograph of Taylor Swift up on the call here, so that Neil would just see what she looks like, and next time there's a reference when you're in Baltimore, you might know who it is now. So have you ever heard any of her music before?
I don't know that I would know it was her though. But now that I know what she looks like, I'll go introduce myself to her.
Yeah, and Taylor, if you listen to WeatherBrains, and we know that you probably do, please send this man an autographed photograph. Neil Jacobs at P.O. Box 10weatherbrains.com, and he would love that. So thank you.
And we'll send you his mugshot. Yeah.
I think Troy wants to sing some Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that'll be happening. Yeah.
Taylor Swift is very polarizing. I've learned that. Either you are a Swiftie and you absolutely love this woman, or it makes you want to barf. There's not much middle ground here. So, and now that she's involved in the NFL, because her boyfriend plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, it's even more polarizing. So it's a very complex societal issue. Kim, I think you should do some research on this whole situation and explain it to us. I don't understand it. So I'm like Neil. I don't.
There's a lot of work to do here. It's a very complex relationship. But the NFL has been very, very pleased with this. So, you know, if you are on social media, it's a force that you just cannot escape in any way, shape, or form. For longer than 5-10 minutes. It's just continually brought to your attention that this person exists and this relationship exists. And I admit, I do not, and I'm sorry, I am sort of a middle ground where I enjoy some of her music and otherwise don't understand like the fanaticism. But I do think that this relationship is something I'm very intrigued by, does need more research. I'm not sure that it's real. And I think that's part of why it gets so much attention, because everyone's just really confused.
Well, did you
I'm
think
confused.
Travis score the touchdown, look up at the press box and give it a heart?
And please.
So you love
point,
this.
Millions of hardcore football fans died at that very moment.
Yeah.
And of course, the conspiracy theorists are saying the whole thing is rigged so that the Chiefs will be in the Super Bowl because of this. It doesn't somehow they will engineer this to get the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And apparently there were some bad calls and a missed field goal in this Buffalo game that resulted in them winning. So I don't even know, who do they play now? Who's a football
Baltimore.
person here? The Ravens. That's right. That's the next. Okay. So that's the AMS deal.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes.
So
it'll be great. But the Bill shouldn't have let it come down to having to make a field goal. That's the way I always look at it.
And goodness, that poor kid that missed the field goal. I say kid, I mean, he was a grown man, obviously, but I saw he pulled his Instagram account down, and he's had death threats, and it's just
and wide right again.
Yeah. But anyway. So Kim, real quick before we hit the recorded segments, tell us about the icing you had earlier today. How bad was it?
It was modest in its initial intensity, and it was the kind of thing where you get less than a quarter inch of glaze, and the forecast is for the temperatures to go up comfortably over freezing. Things should melt. And last night, you look at sort of the model solutions and various cams to try to resolve like the little features of that cold pool that always haunt just exactly what's going to happen. And it looked like there was a lot of consensus about it's going to be 35 degrees, by like 10, 11 in the morning, and everything should be melting. And it still was 32 degrees and below up through this late this afternoon. It was to the point where we really were wondering if it would get above freezing to melt things. So we've sort of been it's like it's kind of a nuisance event for us, fortunately, compared to some of our neighbor states, but it was made so much more aggravating by the anticipation that we'd be able to have a day, and we didn't have a day. Everything got just completely shut down, shut in. I had to, I had the opportunity to grow through my relationship with my husband as all three children were here all day, and I attempted an entire work day. That was a growth opportunity, and what fun. So that's what it's been like here.
See, most people would say a nightmare. Kim calls it a growth opportunity. So there you go. And again, goodness, the videos have been something. I don't know if did you guys see the fire truck video today?
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
I saw that. Yeah.
This was pretty crazy. This is somewhere near St. Louis. This somehow reminds me of Clark W. Griswold in, Christmas Vacation, where he got stuck under the truck and somehow, he got out of there and landed right in the parking lot. But he did a good job of, keeping that thing intact and on the road there. So, all right. So let's pause here. Again, we're going to take a break, and we're going to hear from Tony Rice, and then we're going to hear from Jen. And we're going to come back and revisit our email of the week from last week, because Neil is here, and Neil knows everything.
He does.
He does. And we might, who knows,
Taylor
and we'll
Swift.
do.
Except Taylor Swift.
Except
We'll
anything
do.
people are talking about in the rest of the world outside of weather.
Oh,
But anything weather.
yes.
Yeah.
Woo, wow, that's brutal. But before Neil hangs up on us, let's go right to Tony Rice and Jen. We'll be back with picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The more we learn about exoplanets, or those planets found outside of our own solar system, the more we understand about the planets within our solar system. Astronomers have long thought that a planet's orbit can tell you a lot about how it was formed. Those that stick to the path along their star's equator were very likely formed from the protoplanetary disk made up of gas and dust that surrounded their young, newly formed star. Those with a more inclined orbit, those were probably formed outside that disk. Within our own solar system, each of the planets makes its way around the sun along an orbit that is inclined no more than 7 degrees to the sun's equator. But even that 7 degrees troubled astronomers a bit. If these planets were formed along the same rotating disk, shouldn't they be orbiting even closer to the same plane? The working theory has been that some outside influence, a nearby star or planet, had been pushing around those newly formed lumps of rock and dust, bringing their orbits just a bit out of alignment with their star. Recent studies have suggested otherwise, though. A research team at Yale studied what they called pristine multi-planet solar systems, the kind with orbits relatively undisturbed since their formation. The lead researcher called these systems gorgeous, noting that the length of the year for each planet was an exact integer ratio of its inner neighbor. They found orbital tilts of up to 20 degrees in these pristine solar systems. This has led the team to conclude that Earth's 7.2 degree tilt is probably well under par for the celestial course. Elsewhere in the sky, look for Mars and Mercury to cozy up to each other in the southeastern pre-dawn sky on Saturday morning. The pair will be separated by just a quarter of a degree. Mars will be the brighter of the two, up and to the left of the dimmer, tinier Mercury. Up a bit more and to the right, it'll be hard to miss Venus blazing in the morning sky. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, January 22nd, 1999, we're looking at an F3 tornado that hit Clarksville, Tennessee. Here's a quote from photo editor Fred Dye of the Leaf Chronicle. It looked like somebody walked through with a broom and knocked over whatever was loose enough to knock down. It would turn out to be the busiest January on record in 1999. And on January 22nd, 43 tornadoes occurred, and one of the strongest devastated Clarksville. It struck the town at 4:15 in the morning and moved a total of 6 miles through the downtown area, dissipating not too far from St. Bethlehem. There were 5 injuries and no fatalities. A 5-block area of downtown was destroyed. 22 buildings were severely damaged at Austin Peay State University. The Montgomery County Courthouse was in ruins, and the Leaf Chronicle newspaper office was severely damaged. For the storm data narrative, the newspaper set up a temporary office in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Several old churches were damaged, including the Madison Street United Methodist Church and the Trinity Episcopal Church. A total of 124 buildings were destroyed, and 562 had major damage. Read about this event and over 550 more at tornadotalk.com. Join the American Meteorological Society's Weather Band at amsweatherband.org to connect with weather enthusiasts all over the world, plus 10,000 plus members of the AMS. Swap stories and data, join photo contests and interactive webinars, or test your trivia knowledge. Full membership is just $12 per year. And don't forget to join WeatherBand February 29th and March the 1st from noon to 4 for the annual virtual Jamposium. As requested by WeatherBand members, the Jamposium will cover topics from climate change and severe weather to science communication, citizen science, and the April 2024 total solar eclipse. Go to amsweatherband.org to get started.
All right. Let's do a little email segment here. It's time to do it.
We get letters. We get stacks of letters.
So our email of the week is the email from last week, because we were all just kind of like, I don't know the answer. Neil's not here, so we need to ask him. Thank you, Marvin Johnson, for this question on what are frost quakes?
Oh, you're expecting me to answer?
I am.
So frostquakes are, I guess they're kind of like earthquakes, but a little bit different. So basically what's going on is you have a lot of liquid water that's penetrating the ground, but it's in the form of liquid. And when it rapidly freezes, of course, like all H2O, it expands. And when it expands, particularly into a confined space, it ends up cracking things, cracking against itself, basically expanding the ground. And when it does, it essentially builds up a lot of stress, and then it gives. And then you hear that popping, and a lot of times it, will shake the ground like a tiny earthquake. I guess it's probably not unsimilar to when you're out on like a lake or something. If you've ever been out on a frozen lake and you can hear it popping as the ice expands. Except this is actually ice that's in the earth.
Excellent. Kind of, maybe we can have a gen quake after this weather pattern. Just keep getting expanded and irritated, and then I pop off. And anyway, thank you for that. That is our email of the week. And please send those emails, email at weatherbrains.com. Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter too. You can go to our website, look at our cute faces, and right under there it says the Brainy Bunch newsletter. It comes to your email, and there goes CC running Thursday mornings. It gets to your email inbox, and awesome newsletter articles, history, and whatnot. Back to you, Span.
All right. And again, let's just say this. We get a lot of emails, and they're all seen, and we answer some of them directly, but in an effort to shorten the show up, we're trying to tighten things up a little bit, and we're just doing one email on the air per week, and that'll be the email of the week. So that's the way it works. But we love your emails, and we will answer them as we can, and we're going to pick one every week to read on the air. And oddly enough, Jen, after that question, guess what we had in Alabama last week? Frost quakes. we had them, and some guy said, "Hey man, it sounds like there's a shot going on out here," and it was like 2-3 a.m. and that's exactly what it was. So there you go. So I thought real quick with Kim on the show and Neil, let's do a preview of AMS. Kim and Neil, what can people expect that are going up there this year to Baltimore?
Total chaos. So I've got a plan A and a plan B, and both of them are far less than half baked. So plan B is to do like we did last year, where we run the podcast from a table that we strategically place as an inconvenient intersection of everyone crossing paths, so that we can intercept innocent bystanders. And plan A is if I can get Wi-Fi throughout the convention area, actually running the podcast through some audio systems and potentially camera that I could use my phone, but I'm trying to figure out how to wire like my Canon camera into the Wi-Fi system, and then just run around and harass people from a mobile perspective. That way we can flee the scene before the security gets there.
I'm kind of
Does
waiting
that
to see.
sound?
I want to watch this happen, Neil, because I have a feeling the entire Eastern Seaboard will be blacked out next week. We'll know what it is. So,
We'll see how it goes.
yeah.
So for those that have never been to one of these, it kind of explain how this is. It takes some planning to figure out what you're going to go do and what you're going to go hear. It's just staggering. These things.
I don't. So big shout out to Jen Ives. I have no idea how you pull this off every year. To me, this is the scariest. It's freaks me out just to try to figure out where I need to be, let alone who needs to plan all this stuff. I mean, there's hundreds of parallel sessions going on at the same time, and there's town halls and posters and keynotes, and everything's coordinated perfectly to the minute. It's ridiculous. And then there's a big convention and big expo center, and oh yeah, it's just nonstop entertainment and people watching. If yeah, I mean, I'm excited to go. I'm not giving a single talk this year, and I'm going to be there all day, every day, just learning.
For the people that are maybe going for the first time, what's your advice on how to plan this? Don't they? Isn't there an app that you can use that has all the sessions and
There probably is, but I'm the last person to ask about apps. I have 8 apps on my cell phone. And one of them's for email, the other is for radar scope, and yeah, it's but I go on the website and I look for either authors' last names that are presenting stuff, or I look for keywords, and then there's a handful of different sessions that are kind of unique to my interests. And in the absence of something else going on, I'll just kind of hang out in those sessions and just listen to talks. And then the thing that I love to do the most is go by the student conference, go by the posters. I love to talk to students. I love to see what they're learning and what they're excited about. And it's energizing for me to talk to the students. So I think it's also a cool experience for the students, because I remember when I was a student, when I would go to AMS and present stuff, I loved it when people asked me questions and like would come talk to me about my poster or ask a question at the end of my talk. So now I try to play that role and, ask them questions, poke holes in their research, get them to defend stuff. It's fun.
I attended one of the student sessions at AMS. Well, I say this was in New Orleans, and it was really good. Goodness, those kids were so good, and I learned a lot from talking with them. And it was, I totally agree with that. And Troy, I think the last time I was at an AMS annual meeting, this is embarrassing. It's been 10 years. It was in your town, whenever that was.
In Austin, yeah.
This was in 2013 or 14, something like that.
2013. Again, we had it in, what was it, Kim? I guess in 2016. We followed up a couple of years later.
All right. So Kim, what are you looking forward to in Baltimore and your journey there? Are you speaking?
I am. Unlike Neil, I am going to be giving a bunch of talks. I never take AMS annual meeting easy. It's always some kind of absurdity. But compared to when I was, running a research team and had tons of experiments going on, and I was doing like 6 talks or something each annual meeting, which was really absurd. I'm just doing 3. So it's kind of chill comparatively. But there's a couple of things going on that people might be interested in. One, this year, the annual meeting, they're bringing the awards ceremony back to Wednesday night, and it's not going to be a chicken dinner. It's going to be sort of a little bit more like an awards show, and there's going to be like champagne that they give you to go into the auditorium, and it'll be a little bit more produced, and there might be people wearing tuxes if I can convince enough people. Looking at Neil here, this is another one of my missions to bring him into this in a tux. So it could be really fun, and I encourage people to show up for the award winners because they are, so deserving, and there's such good things going on. So all of this is hopefully something that will properly honor all of the people doing such good works throughout our society. Otherwise, a bunch of awesome sessions. I know if you're interested in the social science aspect of our field, then park yourself in the societal applications room. A lot of great stuff going on in Weather Ready Nation, a lot of good stuff going on in research to operations. That tends to be the places where our work finds its niches most often, and it'll just be a great, wonderful meeting. Even with that football game and all the other distractions, I think we have a lot of fun stuff ahead of us next week.
Well, preview the 3 talks. I mean, just give us a snippet, a tease, if you will.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So if you, I'm admittedly going a little bit philosophical this year, but 2 of the talks are big picture things I'm working on within Weather Service. Now that they've let me in the door, I'm trying to help streamline a couple things. One is what our communication objective is. What is it that we want people to be doing? Are we trying to nudge them into a particular behavior or inform decisions? I'm going to go through that framework, what those are different things, and the operational implications if we pursue either path, and sort of preview what some other decision scientists and I are coming up with to define what it means to have informed decision making, if that's the framework we're going to use. So that's Monday, off the bat in societal applications. On Wednesday, I am organizing a panel on behalf of NSEP where we're going to be talking about an activity we pursued at NWA, trying to give the national centers a little bit more of like an integrated warning team setting to talk with broadcasters and other partners, do more of that collective engagement that they don't typically get to do as much as the local offices do, in order to help evolve our product suite and our communication techniques. So we're going to have reactions to that and sort of paving a pathway forward with a panel of different kinds of folks who were there at that meeting who can offer different perspectives. And then finally, I'm going to give a talk. This is the other philosophical piece. I'll give a talk on sort of defining what it means to communicate forecast uncertainty, because there are a number of different issues that should be considered. It's a lot more than just throwing probabilities at people at random. And we need to really get our focus on this and what we're trying to accomplish. And I'll highlight why that's important, make some arguments, and highlight some of the lessons learned from years of working in this area on behalf of sort of severe technology development especially, but a lot of the things we're learning about the issues that we need to really grapple with before we dump all of the brilliant, beautiful things that models can give us onto people unwittingly.
So there you go. If you're going to AMS, you now have 3 sessions you must attend because they're going to be really good. And if Dr. Jacobs does don a tuxedo, please take some photographs. Please, please. Neil, when was the last time you were in a tux?
It's probably a year, maybe.
So it's a regular thing for you then.
Yeah, I mean, I keep my tux here in DC because I probably wouldn't wear it in any other town, so it's convenient. It's not out of the question. I've been known to wear my tux for no reason, so this is better than no reason.
So is this going to, Kim, is this the thing where there's going to be a tradition every year? We're morphing into a more formal setting for the awards with formal wear?
That is the hope. The hope is that this will become something a little bit like all the space people have something called Space Prom, which is just this very permanent event. And, is sort of like our version of the Academy Awards kind of vibe. So we could very much go that direction. It kind of is something that the AMS annual meeting used to have. We used to have private sector funded events that would bring people together and just were a lot of fun. And we're really thinking, the appropriate way to put our focus on this and get everybody together is probably put that emphasis on the awards and that fellowship, and we can have that fun and do great things. So yes, there's the element of within the event itself going maybe a little bit more toward black tie, but there's also an after party element that is getting built up and expanded. So we're very excited about all those pieces.
All right. Well, be sure and get some pictures, but it's going to be a good show next Monday night. So let's roll on here to, well, I guess we need to talk about the deep freeze now that we've thawed out. Troy, how did you do down in the heart of Texas with that cold?
This last week, guys, in Austin has been incredible. Today, it just happened to be that when we're taping this show, we're at 52.4. This is the first time since last Thursday that we've been out of the above 50 degrees. But here's what's interesting. Since we last talked, that would be Tuesday night, Wednesday night last week, out at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, guys, we got down into that clear sky before all the return moisture started coming back. We got down to 11 degrees here in Austin. That would be last Wednesday morning. Thursday afternoon, with southerly winds picked up, we got up to 78. So on a Wednesday morning, 11, on Thursday afternoon, up to 78. And we're in the top 5 in a 24-hour period. Keith White, who's our excellent climate focal point down at New Braunfels at the Austin San Antonio office, actually has found out this is somewhere in the top 5 of 24-hour warm-ups for the city of Austin. So really incredible stuff. We've gotten back. And then the big thing is today, and I just did a quick dig on this, and this is, to me, is incredible. We've had over 3 inches of rain today, both at Camp Mabry and Bergstrom, both places. I just went back in the CF6 products. I cannot find over a 3-inch rain. You have to go back to the end of January 2022.
Wow.
So almost 2 years since we've had in any single day over 3 inches. We need that rain seriously around here. By the way, for folks out in the hill country, west of Austin, we need it desperately for the lakes. It picked up right along the interstate, was to the east, so it did not help the lakes that much. But the last week has really been fascinating.
Neil, how much snow did you get if you were in DC?
Well, I just got into DC this afternoon, and when I flew in, the ground's coated. There's probably still 2 or 3 inches on the ground here, but in North Carolina, no snow. But it did get into the teens, and I'll tell you a crazy story. A couple days ago, I heard this banging in my crawl space, and I knew it was a pipe, but I couldn't figure out why it was vibrating. So I go into the crawl space.
Scaring me here.
Yeah, and so I go into the crawl space, and it's the cold water input to the hot water heater, and the pipe felt warm, and I thought, that's weird. This, the cold input shouldn't be warm. There's water that's going back up, and I thought maybe it's boiling in the water heater, and the gas is causing the pipe to vibrate, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I would run the hot water until it would get cold, and then it would start up again. And then it just randomly stopped about 3 hours later. So that afternoon, I went for a run, get down to the bottom of the hill, take a right, and there's this fire hydrant that is laying there on its side with a gigantic hole next to it. And apparently what happened is this pipe must have burst below the fire hydrant and created this giant sinkhole. And because I live at the top of the hill, the water pressure must have dropped so much that it was actually creating a vacuum on the cold water side of my house.
Yep.
And when they shut the water off to that, it magically stopped. And I'm just glad I didn't disassemble my entire water heater for no reason.
Yeah, that would ruin your day.
Yep.
Goodness gracious. Jen, how low did you go?
I'm a little disappointed because we only got down to 1 degree and I was hoping we would have gotten at least to 0. So, I mean, come on, just go to 0 already. But yeah, it was cold. Today we got up to 37. So I was running around in my shorts and tank top and it was exciting
Yeah,
to have
flip flops.
37.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
great. But we're supposed to get a little icy tonight. We didn't, surprisingly, did not get a lot of snow. It was so cold. It was that really fine snow, so it didn't pile up too much. About 3 or 4 inches here, just enough to shovel and be a mess. But then tonight we've got the icy stuff coming in, and then it gets really warm and rainy. So it's been crazy here.
We had a relatively high impact snow type ice
Yeah.
event down here last week. Our friends up in Florence, Alabama, Muscle Shoals,
Yep.
Tuscumbia, Sheffield. Troy, you know where that is. They yesterday, after 6 days, they were totally snow covered still.
Yeah.
Many roads were absolutely ice covered. Everything was shut down. I mean, it was a big mess. And I got to tell you
same
guys,
thing up in Northeast Mississippi, James, in Corinth.
Yeah.
Talked to them, 7 to 8 inches of snow, and they're finally getting back to school. I understand in the city schools there tomorrow, but they've been out all of last week and then down today. And up in northern Alabama, I'm hearing the same thing as you mentioned. There are schools actually canceled up there for tomorrow still.
yeah, which is crazy. And I got to say, I got in trouble. I got in big trouble last week for posting this.
Yep.
Now, I will say, when I saw that, I laughed out loud. And for those that are listening, it is a picture of a lady that is sitting on a toilet with the sunset on a snow-covered field in North Alabama. And many water systems failed here, and they had no running water. And the gag was, when you don't have running water, you got to do what you got to do. And I mean, I received over 10,000 messages. I mean, going through these, you don't know how hard that is keeping up with this stuff. It's unbelievably hard. And I was physically tired, mentally tired, and I saw that and I just laughed out loud. I'm gonna put this online, and I was just immediately attacked.
Yep.
From these people with zero sense of humor. I mean, it's just anyway.
You got it. You got FETV even involved in that. So
yeah. It's that was the photograph of the event here. But anyway, it was it was a mess. So we're in the process of the big thaw now.
Yep.
But let's do picks of the week. And again, we're trying to keep the show a little shorter than we have been in recent years. So in order to do that, we're going to start picks of the week. In fact, I'll just start with my pick. It's again, I say 10,000. I think the final count was closer to 15,000. I don't know yet because I've got about 4,000 I've not had a chance to see yet from last week. I mean, you look at one photograph, you look at one video that somebody sends you, and 10 more come in while you're looking at one. It's the Lucille ball and the candy machine and the conveyor belt. I mean, you just can't keep up with it. But one I thought was funny. These knuckleheads got in a boat, a canoe, and they didn't have a sled, so they used that and they sled down their ice-covered driveway into the street. And there's so many goofy videos, but that'll be my pick of the week, a moment of levity, even though as a nation we've lost our sense of humor. Maybe somebody out there has one. So James Adelot, give us a pick of the week that's good. Go.
My pick of the week is the MIC at the National Weather Service office here in Tulsa, Steve Pilt, who is incredibly brilliant meteorologist and great leader for the team out there. And he is using a leaf blower to clear the ice from his patio. He's shooting it kind of underneath the lip of the ice, and it oozes out, pops up the ice, blows it out of the way. There's probably some conductive heat transfer taking place in there too, if you really wanted to be nerdy about it, but it was really very cool.
Yeah, I had a few of those too, and it was very cool, and it's practical and it works. I mean, that's awesome. All right, Kim, give us a pick of the week that's good and exciting.
I don't know if it's good or exciting, but I thought it was funny. I got last week I was at an event called the Steamboat Springs Weather Summit, which is a group of broadcast meteorologists who get together every year and invite in a couple of speakers. I was one of them. It's a really fun time, but I had the opportunity as part of that to be interviewed on like the side of a ski slope and right by a ski resort. It was very, very random, but it's an interview with the CBS affiliate in Dallas, or sorry, in Denver. And it was really a good time. I also really appreciate that they brought me up there. And one of the things that they told me based on the talk that I gave, I had several of them ask me if I was going to ever run for public office, in part because I reminded them of Leslie Knope from oh my gosh, the show's name just totally
Parks and
escaped me.
Rec.
Thank you, Parks and Rec. And I laughed because of course I'm like her. I'm from Indiana. I'm very like, and she just embodies all of these kind Hoosier attributes of somebody who's trying to make her way through a political world. So anyway, I thought that I'd share that because this is my Leslie Knope, very much on display.
But the interview was outside. Goodness, I
Outside with
can't.
beers going by, gondolas going, and I'm there just talking about social science and weather. It's great.
My mouth doesn't work when it's really cold outside. I don't know what it is. I sound like I'm drunk. You know, I mean, I slur my words. I'll never forget, Troy, when I was at Channel 4 in Dallas.
Yeah.
They put me out on Stimmons for a live shot for the CBS Morning News, and I look back on that and I sounded like I was totally drunk. And for some people are good at it. They can talk when it's 5 degrees, but I struggle with it. So Kim apparently is good with it. So, but yeah, well, all the links will be over on the website, weatherbrains.com. All right, Troy, go.
Got to give a plug, and I'll give this a mention to Jen as well, because I'm going to take this further in next week's WeatherBrains newsletter, which I'm writing my article now. Some people were kind of asking about where I was about 2 weeks ago for a week out at Claylock, out on the Olympic Peninsula, out in Washington. Folks, it's an amazing place. It's not probably as sexy as what Mark would deal with hurricanes and things like that, but if you're a Pacific storm watcher in areas like this, I'm going to talk more about it in the newsletter. But the good news is Claylock has a live camera looking out over the Pacific. That's my pick of the week, and it's my advertisement for the famous Jen Naramore and her newsletter, which will arrive in your email box next week.
It's a good tease. All right, Neil Jacobs, give us a pick of the week.
My pick of the week are, I don't know if y'all saw this. It kind of got some attention on social media. Of course, I'm not there. Somebody sent it to me like third hand, but these mesoscale vortices that showed up over Lake Michigan. I thought this was super cool, and everyone got really excited that they saw it on radar, which of course is pretty cool. But the thing that I thought was cool was that it actually showed up on the models. Both the RRFS and the HER and the other mesoscale models correctly predicted this. If you look at the 0 to the 3 kilometer absolute vorticity, and even at the surface, it's pretty cool that something so crazy was actually predicted by the models. But as everything that shows up new and interesting in weather, somebody already wrote a paper on it. So it's, the title of the paper by Grimm et al. Is Mesoscale Vortices Embedded Within Lake Effect Shoreline Band. So nothing new, but still cool.
That was a very, very cool radar loop. And James A., you call it the what?
The Great Lake Snow Snake.
That might have to be the show title for this week.
Well.
Yeah. But that was a very cool radar loop. All right, Jen, give us something good.
So my pick of the week comes from our friend Jay Farlow, who sent this in. And when I first saw the title, I was like, well, that's kind of funny. And then I read the article and I'm like, this makes me extremely sad. Woman scared of weather calls in fake burglary, police say. And so I read the article and I just felt awful for this woman. And I wanted to send her a weather radio. I'm like, you don't want anyone to ever be so scared. And she was an Alabama woman. And she called in a fake burglary because she was scared of the weather and wanted police to come to her house. And then she ended up, because she made a false report, she was arrested for making a false report. And it just made me sad, because you hope that no one would be so scared that and alone or whatever, that they would have to resort to that to to feel safe. So anyway, that's my sad pick of the week. So you probably should pick me first. So somebody had something else better.
Let's deconstruct that for just a minute. Now, I got to be sure I understand this story. Now, and then first off, it's in the Wiregrass section of Alabama. This is the southeastern corner of the state near Dothan.
Mhm.
So there was a lady that was afraid of weather.
Yeah,
And
she was scared of the weather.
She called the cops
Mhm.
over a burglary that wasn't happening. What was the end game for her? Was it to have company in the house, security in the house for her? Just to not, she didn't want to be alone. Is that the deal?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's how I read it. Yeah.
Or did they want her to did she want them to take her somewhere where she would be safe? I mean, I don't quite understand
what kind of weather was she afraid of?
This was from January 21st. So I don't know what would have been severe weather. I don't know.
It was probably the event that was kind of a bust. It was about
January
9 days ago. Yeah.
It was January 9th is when she called 911 and reported a burglary. And then the officers showed up. There was no burglary. And the authorities say that she was scared of the bad weather happening that day.
And I read it the same way you did, Jen. I felt really sorry for her because I think, James, like you said, she just wanted company. She needed somebody to be around. And that's sad.
And storm phobia is real. It's very real. People there's a subset of people that are absolutely scared to death, and they're not doing it to put on a show or making it up. They're genuinely scared, and there's real fear. And I see it all the time in messaging over here on the social side. All these people will send constant messages, and they will express in their messages, "I'm scared. I'm afraid." And and that's why I cannot stand fear porn. The people that use fear to gain followers and engagement and likes and get their social media scores up and their money and monetization and all this stuff. I mean, it's just, the 3-week hurricanes, the 3-week snowstorms, the tornado outbreaks, whatever. I mean, we just got to be real careful and be aware that some people are scared to death. And that's kind of the thing here. So Bill Murray is not here, but next week it's AMS week featuring Neil and Jen from Baltimore with Tay-Tay.
No, it'd be Kim. Not
Kim. What did I say, Jen? I'm sorry. With
That's
Kim,
okay.
Kim and
I've
Neil.
never been to an AMS, so I'm a sad meteorologist.
I've
never been to an annual meeting. I know. So
it can be overwhelming, but it's fascinating at the same time.
I'd like
wait till next year, Jen. You can come. We're all going to New Orleans next year. I am going to that one. New Orleans is next year, so we're all going.
All right. Well, the problem, there's some of these, like in January, the weather is always funky here in January. It is just so hard to get away when you're working in a TV shop and you're like the main guy and you've only got a few people that are helping you. And the timing is a challenge because inevitably here we have a flood, a tornado, an ice storm, something weird is going on. But anyway, I would love to go to New Orleans next year. But anyway, we're going to wrap this up. And again, for those that one more time, typically the shows have been longer, but we have decided to tighten up a little bit. So typically we're going to try and get these things down to about maybe 90 minutes, which is the case this week. But thanks to Mark Suddeth, who was on the show with us this week. And Bill should be back next week. And of course, we'll have the AMS show next week. But if you want to get in touch with us and send us an email, please do so. Email at weatherbrains.com. And if you're new here, we typically are doing the show Monday nights at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. You can watch it live on the WeatherBrains YouTube channel, youtube.com/weatherbrains. But we know that most of you listen. However you watch, listen, we're just glad you're here. Again, send us an email at weatherbrains.com. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good
Thank
show.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Fun.
Bye-bye.
See ya, guys.
Night.
Y'all have a great night. Bye-bye.